Hey, what's up, ladies, gents, dudes, dudettes, fans, and non-fans? Why would you be a non-fan if you weren't here? Because we got some rumor and innuendo to talk about today. It's Monday. It's Thanksgiving week. I'm Dominic D'Angelo of AdFreeShows.com, SEScoops.com, and OneTrueSportTV.com. But Robert will be here. Fear not, he will be here. He'll just run a little late. But we'll be covering a lot today when it comes to Full Gear, what happened on the pay-per-view itself, what happened before the pay-per-view, and hey, we got some stuff to talk about on SmackDown, and obviously we have Raw tonight too. But let's say hi to some folks in the room here. Stuart Green says, "Good afternoon, everyone. Looking forward to today's episode. So much to talk about. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know what? I got to be honest. I haven't even checked the dirt sheets yet this morning. I wasn't even on shift." So I got to even see if there's some breaking news or anything that's going down that I got to be aware of. I think I did hear something about Jade Cargill. No, I think maybe that was just an article. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. If there's something about Jade Cargill, let me know. I did see she obviously got attacked on SmackDown. Didn't know if that was an indication that maybe she'll be out on the shelf for a while. Not too sure. I'm actually looking at it. Going to my website, not my website, SEScoops.com, the site I work for. Okay, here we go. WWE, the breaking news. Jade Cargill has been diagnosed with the following injuries: deep lumbar paraspinal muscle contusions, bruised kidney, sprained MCL in her right knee, tibial plateau bone bruise of her right knee, facial laceration. There is no timetable for her return. Wow, she is out. Man, look at that picture. I know nobody can see it because I'm just looking at it, but holy cats. Yeah, probably she might be hurt, guys. I mean, and I don't mean from the storyline standpoint. I mean, she just probably maybe hurt, and they got to do a little pivot or something. So we'll see what happens. Fun, entertaining. I mean, you don't like to see Jade Cargill get out of commission or hurt or not bad, but they did a good job at showing it. Looked pretty chilling the way she was laid out and everything like that. So that, in that regard, was entertaining. Let's say hi to some more folks. Wrestling Old Ed says, "Happy Monday, R&I. Full Gear thoughts. First half, boom. Second half, doom." Ooh, I like it. Jeroy J, can't wait to hear why I shouldn't have liked Full Gear. Ooh, Jeroy J, maybe you should make a case why you did like Full Gear if you do like it. Lou4237 says, "The Bloodline plot coagulates. Why did Sammy take a phone? Or why did Sammy take a phone or out of his pocket and toss it on the couch? Why was Heyman dressed like Solo? Turning on Roman." Ooh, some intriguing stuff. Hey, speaking of intriguing stuff, we have Robert Karplis here. Robert, you're looking very Miami Vice with the pink shirt today. Uh-oh, you're muted, my friend.
Yeah, you're going to ignore the many angry text messages I was just sending you. You had sent me the wrong link, so I'd been sitting in the wrong room waiting for several minutes.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Robert.
It's time to give thanks, everybody, for a chance for me to say, "Damn it, Dom."
No, my phone was blowing up. I was hearing all the good vibrations. But
all right. Well, no, I'm agitated enough, and now we're going to be talking about this Full Gear show.
That was intentional, Robert. Completely.
Dude, yeah, because I needed more reason to be worked up. Thanks, Dom.
You're welcome.
Dude, all right. I don't know what was covered over the last 4 minutes.
I was just talking about Jade Cargill being hurt, so kind of just teeing up a little bit of stuff.
She got thrown through a car.
Yeah, right? So they gave a little update on her, and I went through her injuries from a storyline perspective. Wonder if she's actually out of commission. It would seem that way, right, Robert? If they're maybe we're writing her off for a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. We'll see. You know, I think that not putting Jade in a War Games match, probably a good idea. If she's injured, definitely you don't want to have her in there. If they didn't put her in there because they didn't feel like they could trust her in that sort of an environment, probably also a good idea to keep her protected.
Yes, I agree. Well, you know what? Let's say you want to just start with SmackDown here.
No.
Okay.
Nothing. I mean, look, we've got like 25 minutes. I'm going to take a look at what occurred on SmackDown of any major notice. So there's only one thing worth talking about.
Yes. Well,
on SmackDown, and here's the challenge. Here's the rub. They double taped SmackDown so that they could let these these ingrates go celebrate with their families,
How dare
Vince
they?
McMahon would be rolling in his grave if he knew these people were getting a chance to spend time with their loved ones. We
Oh,
are not going to talk about the spoilers for this week's SmackDown. That's messed up, but it does kind of mean that Raw tonight's very much a lame duck episode of Raw.
it's a good point. Good, very good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, Robert. Yeah, didn't even recognize that it was double taped, but makes plenty of sense considering the trend that they've been doing, and it's a positive trend though in the grand scheme of it all. You want to see the wrestlers spend time with their families.
You do want people to spend time with their families, absolutely. In fact, I will be spending time with my family, so this will be my lone appearance on the show for this week.
Ooh,
Whether you, Dom, you're taking time off to enjoy with your family, or you'll be here,
eh, I'll do
that
it.
sounds lovely. Dom will be here.
I'll do it.
I can't, having spent time with Marcus, I can't blame you.
That's right, Robert. I'll be here. Probably I won't be here on Thanksgiving, guys. Heads up. But the other days, I might still do it. So
Yeah, Thanksgiving, I'll be on a train at that point, heading to Long Island. So,
ooh, choo choo. I
No.
choo choo.
anyway, SmackDown gave the big reveal. The big reveal being that the fifth man, as introduced by Paul Heyman, was CM Punk.
Yes. Did you like
Not as much as your cat, apparently.
He's going nuts right now. Hold on.
I had heard some kayfabe rumblings that there was a possibility that it was going to be Punk. So I was ensuring to double down on the it's going to probably be Seth Rollins. The surprise for Punk was fantastic. Paul Heyman is the master of subtlety when he's trying to tell stories. The fact that he came out there not wearing the suit, that he came out there wearing the red shirt.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch. The look of surprise on Roman's face that number one, Paul Heyman is here. Number two, Paul Heyman has brought CM Punk. That's telling a really fun story. So whether or not we're going to see a split between Paul and Roman, whether there will be camaraderie and unity amongst the old school bloodline, it certainly makes Survivor Series a very intriguing show, all within the confines of one match.
And Robert, you mentioned it too, like your prediction about Sami Zayn ultimately being the one to turn on the bloodline. That's another added element. So you have Paul Heyman almost basically kind of, hey, here's an offer. Here's CM Punk. I know you guys aren't on the same page, but this is what I brought you. But what does that entail moving forward with Heyman and everything? There's a lot of intriguing elements. Love to set up and build to it throughout SmackDown when it comes to how the OG bloodline were in dire straits. What's next for them? We're gonna fight till if we end, we end. And that what Roman said and everything like that. So liked it. I thought that was a very compelling thing. Probably the most compelling thing of the weekend, I would say.
That was a smart strategy on WWE's part to save that for full gear weekend. I don't know if they necessarily knew or cared or that particularly concerned by what's going on in All Elite Wrestling, but at the same time, it was very much the story that sort of dominated the weekend, with the exception of obviously match of the year candidate, Big Boom AJ versus QT Marshall.
100%, Robert. Man, the feedback given online about it all, it's just very positive. And it was not on the pay-per-view.
It was not on the pay-per-view, but in AEW's defense, if there was a lot of casual people, a lot of folks who are fans of the Rizzler, whatever the hell that is, or they're fans of the Costco guys, and they wanted to tune in and watch it, they weren't necessarily going to pay the $60 for the pay-per-view, but they would tune in for a free stream, and maybe you hook them into ordering that pay-per-view. Yeah. It's a possibility. That was, I'm sure, their thought process here. But I thought for the overall show, there's a comment here from Jeroy J that I want to get to. He wrote, Statlander, Mercedes, Osprey, Fletcher, Ricochet, Takeshita, Hangman, Switchblade, all amazing matches. Don't see matches like that anywhere else. And I think that sort of hits the two thought processes for what's going on in terms of how we consume and enjoy wrestling. There is no singular right answer. There is no singular wrong answer. For the most part, in terms of how you enjoy watching wrestling. I would caution anybody that's going out of their way to go still try to watch death matches in 2024, like the real scary death matches, knowing what we know now about CTE and how it's shortened people's lives. But that's me. I'm also not someone who's going to go out of their way to watch bum fights. But it is unquestionable that there were matches on Full Gear that were very good to great. I would say the Ospreay Fletcher match was great. I think nobody could watch that and come away from it and say this was not a really great wrestling match. Mercedes and Chris Statlander went a long way towards reminding people Mercedes was signed because she is one of the best women wrestlers on the planet. And what her and Chris Statlander were able to do together was great.
I agree.
Ricochet Takeshita. I'm obviously a big Ricochet fan. I've been a friend of Ricochet's for a very long time. I wanted to like this match more than I did. I found that part of what made this show a little challenging was the layout of the overall show. And we're not going to have a chance to go match by match, segment by segment. Myself and Scott Chapman on Working Stiff are going to be doing that for a special pre-Thanksgiving edition. We're going to break down Full Gear. We're going to break down Survivor Series. That'll be coming to you this evening, by the way.
That's Scott on the actual feed, Working Stiff feed, Robert?
It's in the actual Working Stiff feed, yeah. We're being generous. It's Thanksgiving. It was going to be a Patreon. We're doing it as the main feed. It's going to go up there. We're going to record it this afternoon. It'll be up this evening. Assuming Dom is able to keep his cat in check.
Get earbuds.
The biggest challenge that I had from this show was it did feel like it for the most part, it was going match. You had one Let Me Up segment, which was the Mina Shirakawa, Mariah May interaction, which I thought was good. Where they ran into issue was it went Danny Garcia, Jack Perry, followed by Ricochet Takeshita, followed by Lashley Swerve, followed by Orange Cassidy, Jon Moxley. Audiences in 2024, for the most part, are conditioned for matches and then a little bit of a break. I think WWE goes a little too long with those breaks. They only do 5 matches, but because of the Peacock relationship, they have to plug in some commercial breaks. But that crowd in New Jersey, which is usually a pretty hot audience, there were parts during that show where they went quiet.
Well, even in the opener, Robert, like the kicking off the show, it was just, I think everybody was on the high of the Big Boom match and everything like that. And then
the Big Boom, this is the thing about that Big Boom match. Now, obviously, they put Big Show in there, and anyone who's listened to Working Stiff knows my thoughts on what it was when working with Big Show. So I have a little bit of a bias that I'm willing to agree to. I don't know that he was needed for this, quite frankly. It was a fine, goofy, old school, quasi-celebrity. No one really embarrassed themselves, but I think, it was Scott Chapman had said, it's like, this looked like when you graduate wrestling school and this is the match they let you have. So it was feel good. It was a nice little celebrity interaction. It was fine. Stuart Green makes a very good point about this show, which is no learning tree was a plus. That you can't discredit that. But yeah, they open with that 4-way tag match, which all those teams are obviously entertaining. It's Private Party, Outrunners, whatever Malachi Black and Brody King call their group, because they have multiple names. They're the House of Black, but then they're also, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I can't remember what the name was.
The Temple of Doom, something. And then the Acclaimed. And for whatever reason, this 4-way tag match just did not gel for me, Dom.
Yeah, it's good to see Private Party retain and that they're making trying to get some value out of it and build them as a team. I did like the aspect of them coming out with an entourage, basically, of ladies. I thought that was kind of leans into the Private Party aspect, makes them feel like a bigger deal. But, the crowd was flat starting off, and it kind of did that throughout the whole show in a lot of ways. So
the match, look, the Outrunners are over, so I get that. And for whatever reason, it's now in vogue to hate Max Caster. I'm not in that camp.
Okay,
I still enjoy what Max does. I thought the Acclaim was a white hot act. It sold merchandise. It got over with the crowd. It was a fun shtick. But then when you don't have the follow through, it kind of goes it goes away. Like the audiences are not just going to stay with it. It's kind of, we saw that with Zack Ryder years
Mhm.
ago when the woo 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 stuff got over and people loved him, and then eventually his inconsistency, he just became another guy. So I hope that that's not the case with the Outrunners. Yes, I like the Private Party got their entrance. The trying to make Malachi Black and Brody King the dominant team in that match is the whole like, oh, they got cheated, they'll get their say. And it does feel like they may actually be pulling the Acclaimed apart. You had a miscommunication. You had obviously the crowd just burying Max Caster. So I guess they're going to lean into it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. From the whole grand scheme of the show, it's just like you look at it from. I almost make the Colin Cowherd analogy of, you look at it like with how a sports team is operated when it comes to, like, if you have a good sports team, if you have a good football team like the Kansas City Chiefs or something, you always find ways to win. You find you're willing to pivot away from certain things. I found from this show that ultimately they didn't pivot from certain things that really tripped the show up in a lot of ways. Just from a storytelling aspect, as a key thing. I mean, we'll get to the ending, but I mean,
we'll get to the ending. I'm just going to kind of blow through. So MJF Roderick Strong, it takes a lot to make Max this cold.
Yeah,
he is as much as it's a shtick that he's a once in a generation talent. He is absolutely a once in a generation talent. He is one of, if not the best heel in wrestling. Obviously, he can wrestle. There's just been a disconnect with how they presented him. This crowd did not take Roderick Strong all that seriously. I think part of them knew he's not really a babyface. They didn't understand it totally. Part of them were just like, he's not a guy at his level. They had him tap clean, Roderick Strong, and then there's the arm break with the chair, and then after the arm break is when Adam Cole runs out for the save. So either that is telling a very compelling long-term story or just not paced well.
I agree. Yeah, it's Robert. It's just, with a guy like MJF, you cannot. It's hard. He's supposed to be your top heel, and he does not feel like that right now.
But he's also not your top heel because you have the Death Raiders, whatever, as your top heel stable. You have the Don Callis family, who's one of your top stables. You have the Hurt Syndicate, who's one of your top heel stables. And then there's Max, who's not going after a title. He's not in the world title picture. He's a guy who's clearly doing projects outside of AEW. He's filming Happy Gilmore 2. So this was a way to put him out there. And it did not really deliver. What did deliver, like I said, was Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander. This felt like a statement match. This felt like Mercedes has heard the criticism, both outside of AEW and in the case of Jim Ross within AEW. And her and Statlander told a good story. It was a compelling match. It was a tough fought win for Mercedes Moné. And then it's kind of like, all right, where are we going to go from here?
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like Mercedes is so good, and you do forget about how good she is, but like her ability to sell and ability to rise to a level of somebody that's bigger than her and make the match work. And but what is next? Because you think about it, they did have the little presentation when it came to Mariah May and Mina Shirakawa, but that title almost feels like an afterthought. The women's title itself, where the TBS title is okay. That's on Mercedes Moné, but what's the next step for her? What's the next step for someone like Chris Statlander after she just loses to Mercedes Moné?
I think the way that Mercedes,
but I don't know, Robert.
The way that Mercedes has to treat that TBS title is a lot like how Rob Van Dam treated the ECW TV title. It was, you got to beat me, and beating me in and of itself is meaningful.
I think that's good.
So hopefully that's the way we pivot to with that. Hangman Adam Page, Jay White, obviously a very good match. But the audience did not know who to connect with. I don't think they fully understand that, or they understood that Jay White was supposed to be the pure babyface here. It felt like neither fish nor fowl for either one of them. So then when you got to the finish, it was kind of Jay White hit that, he hit the Switchblade, whatever, out of nowhere. Blade Runner, thank you. fine. And then it's Hangman Adam Page going crazy after, and you're like, where is that going to go? And we found out later on in the show, so we'll put a pin in it for right now.
Yeah.
Ospreay Fletcher, I thought was really, really incredible. And what made it so impactful was Kyle Fletcher pinned Ospreay essentially clean.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Basically.
yes, there was the story of the pile driver onto the stairs and Ospreay's arm going limp and all that. They told a really nice story, but it felt like this was a signature win for Kyle Fletcher. Really strong, really well done. And then you're like, well, I wonder where they're going to go from here. Ospreay's a dude who can get it back tomorrow.
Absolutely.
You know, one promo, and you're like, now I want to see these guys wrestle at the World's End show that they have in December.
Mm-hmm.
Mariah May, Mina Shirakawa, they had their segment. It was fine. I didn't quite understand what the purpose of this was, other than to set up that Mina Shirakawa was going to be the next person going after Mariah May. Didn't quite get why Mariah was so quick to want to turn on her.
Mm-hmm.
And if that was the case, there were probably more elaborate ways you could have went ahead and did that. The bump onto the table looked like it sucked. And seeing Mina Shirakawa with the blood and what appears to be potentially a missing tooth, nice visual. I guess we'll get that at the next show, but I don't know.
It's too concentrated too soon, I think, to have all this, because I said it in the group text with everybody that women's roster is so underserved, because 0 Hour, you had names like Deonna Purrazzo, Taya Valkyrie, and who did Deonna go up against? That was another name. And I'm just like, what? These women aren't being utilized to the fullest extent.
I know you're building up Julia Hart with a video package, but then it's like you have Anna Jay, you have Taya Valkyrie still part of the roster. Serena Deeb is feuding with Britt Baker, or was 2 weeks ago. So it's a lot of like, you want something to really be able to sink your teeth into with that division. And obviously with the Mercedes Chris Statlander match, you took one step forward. This was an attempt at telling a story. It was fine. We'll see where it goes and kill time until Toni Storm is back. Speaking of killing time, Danny Garcia and Jack Perry.
Yeah.
The second they came out, I was like, this show always has a match where I'm just like, this show is already feeling a little too long.
Mm-hmm.
And this could have been moved to Dynamite as the main event of Dynamite, and I don't think you would have lost anything.
It would have made more sense, I think. You would have built that match and made it feel like a bigger deal.
It's a feel-good moment because Danny Garcia is re-signed with AEW, and he said, my goal was to win a title, and he won the title. There's something about the way Jack Perry wrestled this match, though, that kind of deprived Danny Garcia of that moment. There's a moment where he sticks his arms out, and he's just kind of like, all right, like, let me see what you got. And the announcers are like, what do you do? Like, punch him. Like, do something.
Yeah.
And it was Matt Menard that did that. And I was like, okay. So then it just felt showy, and it was like, look at how magnanimous I am. I'm going to put this guy over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, that rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. The match itself was fine. Ricochet Takeshita, again, coming right off of the Danny Garcia match, going into another mid-card title match, people kind of expected this to be a match of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fine. It didn't get to that next level that it needed to. They didn't go to a full gear, Dom.
No, hey, good point. Do you think Ricochet's going to be lost in the shuffle here in the grand scheme of it all in AEW?
Yes, that was my next point. I'm glad you made that. He is not a dude who's ready for, I'm going to get beat clean.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the Don Callis family, the whole purpose of a heel stable, as you know, Bobby the Brain Heenan illustrated, is for interference, for situations in which there's a distraction, there's a something that helps your heel retain. When you're a dude going up against another dude and he just beats you outright, it's very hard for me to think, man, that's Takeshita, what a dastardly heel. It's like, no, good for you. You beat Ricochet. Ricochet, you're a loser. I don't value you as a main event star right now, which sucks because he absolutely should be in that position. Beating Ospreay is questionable, but he can get it back. Ricochet over the last few weeks has not been booked strong. and then goes and gets built up for a title and then loses, it feels like what they do to a lot of the women in the women's division.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I don't know. Like, is he going to the Hurt Syndicate? Does that make sense? But it's also like that's not the spot for him. I don't think. I think
it really doesn't feel like the spot for him unless they just feel comfortable with we're going to make him a heel. Speaking of the Hurt Syndicate, Lashley and Swerve was fine, but it was the third babyface they beat clean on this show. And if you know you're doing that Ospreay finish and you want it to land and you want it to feel impactful and important, you can't do two other babyface heel matches where the heels win clean, because then it's like, why am I believing in the hero?
Right.
And I'm not saying you need, like George J makes a point here. He says interference is so overdone these days. It's refreshing to not have it. It is, but that's not what the audience is necessarily conditioned for. And you can have subtle interference. You don't need a dude running in a hoodie and laying somebody out while the referee is inches away from you, not knowing where to look. Not that I'm thinking of any example in particular, but MVP distracting Swerve and then with a cane, waving the cane in the air, Swerve turns, boom, he gets hit with a spear. That's fine. That's a subtle sort of interference. Don Callis, same kind of thing. That's why you have those there, to protect your baby faces, because now you have to spend time rebuilding a Ricochet. You need to spend time rehabilitating Swerve. You could have done, one of those matches with a non-finish. You could have done, if Ricochet Takeshita ended, let's say, a double count out or something like that. You can go to the rematch at the next pay-per-view, and the story's already told. Speaking of story, Dom, because we got 3 minutes left, and there's a ton of stuff. Orange Cassidy, Jon Moxley. What did you think of the match?
I like the match.
Gaga after you like the match.
I like the match, and I actually like the finish to it, but I didn't like the Gaga afterwards. But the match itself, thought they set up Orange very well. Moxley looked ruthless, the blood on everything. The little pocket shin kick thing kind of took me out of it a little bit overall, but that's Orange's nature. So in the whole grand scheme of it all, I like the match itself.
Sold American. There was a moment, so after this match, where you're waiting for who the big save is going to be.
Yes.
And then the big save was Hangman Adam Page.
Yes.
And the entire crowd just collectively went, huh?
Yeah.
And then Christian comes out. And he goes to cash in his contract. And I'm like, wait, is Hangman a babyface? Is Hangman working with Christian?
Yes.
Why am I caring about this? And then Jay White comes out and lays out Christian. And the announcers have to remind you that it was Christian who took Jay White out of action a few months ago. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And that crowd
was not on the crowd, though, either.
No, that crowd was not treating that like this was a big revenge main event moment. And then they go outside to a car that gets smashed by another car. But don't worry, there's a third car just sitting there, and they just drive off. And you're like, oh, man, who is going to be the reveal that comes out of this field? This may be the big, huge, it's Darby Allin. And Darby faced his toughest opponent ever, which was the hood of that car that he could not climb up on. This guy was going to climb Everest.
Yes.
And he can't climb a vehicle. So now you're like, the guy who just got beat clean by Claudio Castagnoli is the next, great big hope for All Elite Wrestling. It felt like a lackluster end. It felt very confusing. It felt very WCW. And in a show that had some very strong matches, it's kind of what we always want up having to do with AEW. It's like they have a big show, and then we wind up talking about something goofy. A plastic bag, a guy drinking another guy's blood, an exploding ring that doesn't explode, a bunch of interferences that are post-show run-ins that made no sense.
Robert, I would have been way okay with those baby faces all losing clean for the most part if you had a good landing at the end of the show when it came to the storytelling element of Moxley's faction and the Death Riders and what's to come. And you have the baby faces down, but they could get back up. But when you have this ending that is very lackluster and very head scratching, you do not do anybody favors across the board for your baby faces, your heels, or your promotion itself.
The final takeaway I'll have on this, and then we'll wrap this sucker up, is yes, you don't see all of these types of matches in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the story that they are telling, the Bloodline story alone that they are telling, makes Survivor Series infinitely more compelling. There's about 7 or 8 stories going into that one singular match where you're like, I'm really interested in what's going to happen here. The way they told the Kevin Owens Cody story was fairly interesting. The women's War Games match is just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens, but great wrestling in and of itself does not paper over the fact that it was not a great cohesive show that they're asking people to pay $50, $60 for. I think that the audience that loves great wrestling and just great wrestling is far more niche than who AEW is trying to play for. And maybe their recalibration into smaller arenas is going to allow them to mature in that direction and say, if this is what you want, stick with us. If that's not what you want, there's plenty of alternatives, but we are happy to just give you a really solid in-ring product. And if that's all they want to do, good on you and God bless. And I will say, since this will be my last appearance this week, I hope everybody watching this in the United States has a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'll be enjoying up in New York. I'll actually be at the Macy's parade. I have seats near the entrance, so if you see me waving in a coat, nearly freezing to death, that'll be that. But Dom will steer this the rest of the way, and then I will be back for probably a working stiff weekend edition where we're going to talk Survivor Series. I'll be back here next Monday, as I will every Monday through Friday under any other week on a plethora of platforms, including WWE Creative_ish X account, the SE Scoops X account, and on YouTube on Rumor and Innuendo, ad-free shows, and Working Stiff. Dom, I am thankful for having the best producer in the biz, even if sometimes he sends me the wrong link. So on behalf of the always thankful Dominic D'Angelo, I'm Robert Karpelis. Best of luck in your future endeavors.
Robert, I am thankful for your patience.